Well, thank you for the very kind words. It's an honor to be here in mighty Richardson, Texas. Which is truly the epicenter of the most dynamic economic region in the entire United States of America. And I want to thank all of the leaders who gathered with us. I know I had the opportunity to meet some, and there's so many more here, whether you're on the local city council, whether you're involved in the local chamber of commerce, whether you're one of the business leaders, or whether, very important to me, you're one of the members of the legislature. I see Representative Leach right here. I know Angie Chin-Button is around here somewhere. There she is. Thank both of you for your leadership. I appreciate your county judge. One of your county judges. I was told that as we are eating lunch today, like the county line goes through the middle of this building or something like that. And so, candidly, I don't know which county I'm in right now, but we only have one county judge with us today. Judge Jenkins, thank you very much for being a part of this with us here today. It's kind of interesting how I got here because, as was mentioned earlier, Angie and Jeff Leach cornered me and pretty much coerced me to being here. They know something about me that I know a few others know a little bit about me, and that is I'm keenly focused on the Constitution. And especially in my record before I was governor, I focused a whole lot on asserting legal actions to maintain the protections provided to us by the United States Constitution, including issues based upon the First Amendment. And so they approached me and said, Governor, listen, we just got a question for you, and that is, do you truly still believe in adhering to and supporting and living up to the values and principles in the First Amendment? And I said, well, of course I do. And they said, oh, so does that mean that you really believe in free speech? And I said, absolutely. They said, great. We need you to come give one in Richardson, Texas. But I'm honored to be here with you. They did tell me, however, kind of the setting, and that is I'm going to be amongst a lot of people who are business people, meaning that you have to be able to get back to work here pretty soon. In fact, somebody already told me they're going to be getting up and leaving during my presentation. Don't take offense, because they just have to get back to work. And I tried to explain to them, listen, don't worry about it, because I learned the hard way about being too long-winded up here. As Dr. Hayne mentioned in the introduction, before I was governor, and actually before I was attorney general, I was on the Texas Supreme Court. And during a presentation one time at a gathering of lawyers when I was on the Supreme Court, I was the next speaker, and I pulled up through the doors in the back of the room. And I kind of wanted to get a feel for how things were going. So I pulled up alongside a lawyer and asked him, well, how are things going? He said, well, things are going pretty good so far, but our next speaker is one of those long-winded judges, and you know how that goes. I said, well, do you have any idea who I am? He said, no, I don't have a clue. I said, well, I'm Judge Greg Abbott, and I'm the next speaker. You could tell he was embarrassed, but you could tell he was one of these quick-witted lawyers, because he looked back at me and said, well, do you have any idea who I am? I said, no, I have no idea. He said, great, I'm out of here. I know some of you are going to be out of here soon, but there's some very important things I want to cover. Let me start out this way with an interesting concept that you all see as profoundly here in Richardson, and certainly in these two counties that we are involved in today as much as any other place. And that is, as we gather here today, on this day, there will be about 1,000 people who will call Texas home today. And that happens every single day, where new people are coming in from across the country, from across the state, from across the entire globe, coming to the state of Texas. Now, I realize when a lot of people hear that 1,000 new people are coming here, some people like that idea. Some people dislike that idea when you think about growing traffic congestion and things like that. But we can never lose sight of the reason that so many people are making life-altering decisions to uproot their families and leave places they've lived in for a long time and chart a new path, a path that has brought them to the state of Texas. The reasons are pretty common. They were fed up with big government policies in the states that they left behind that were increasingly running their lives and imposing burdensome regulations and higher taxes. In the states that they left behind, the cost of doing business imposed by special interest groups simply became too oppressive. They needed an escape. They longed for freedom. They wanted hope. And they found it in Texas. Well, the newcomers have joined together with longtime Texans, and together we have forged what has become the most powerful state in the United States of America. As you were talking about earlier, Dr. Hain, Texas leads the nation in new job creation, and we have the fastest growing economy in America. As you mentioned, if Texas were its own country, as some people say again, if we would have the 10th largest economy in the entire world. Let's put that in some type of context. If you were to compare the Texas economy with economies of other countries, the Texas economy is larger than the economy of Canada. It's larger than the economy of Australia. And believe it or not, the Texas economy is even larger than the economy of Russia. And that makes me more powerful than Putin. Well, along with this growing economy are some very meaningful benefits, one of which is that last year Texas set an all-time record low in unemployment. And I noticed that Richardson has an even lower unemployment rate than the average unemployment rate in the state of Texas. Also, the Texas economy has become more diversified than ever before. And candidly, Richardson has been a key reason for that diversification. Listen, as we all know, the Texas economy for 100 years has been driven in part by the growing oil and gas sector. But we all know with the ups and downs of the oil and gas sector, it is so very important that we have a diversified economy so that when the price of oil goes down, our economy will continue to go up. And you all have helped us achieve that very important goal. So whether it's from things like aerospace to cybersecurity, from financial services to manufacturing, from Fortune 500 companies to small startups, the fact of the matter is that the diversification has added tremendously to the breadth and to the strength of the Texas economy. And this success is due in part to chambers of commerce like this one, as well as your peers across the entire state of Texas. It is also, I must emphasize, due in part to the Texas Enterprise Fund, which promotes that economic diversification. And I want to thank both Angie Chim-Button as well as Jeff Leach for your support of the Texas Enterprise Fund that is our deal closing fund. Some of you know what this is, and I have to emphasize to you that as we go through the remaining months of the legislative session, it's important for all of you to weigh in as you go to Austin, Texas, and talk to your legislators to emphasize the importance of the legislature once again providing funding for the Texas Enterprise Fund so we can bring more of those deal closing operations right here to the greater Richardson area. As an example, we've seen the effectiveness of it here in Richardson. This past November, and we were talking about this at our table, we were involved in the technology giant Emphasis announcing that it would expand its presence in Richardson and on their part with a $12 million capital investment, adding 500 new jobs. The Enterprise Fund grant helped to close that deal. And the Enterprise Fund, it works tirelessly with chambers of commerce like this one and with our collaborative help with chambers of commerce here and across the state of Texas. You've helped us achieve remarkable acclaim because for each of the past 4 years in a row, Texas has won what's called the Governor's Cup. The Governor's Cup goes to the state that ranks #1 in America for new and expanded corporate facilities. That is another way of saying ranks #1 in America for economic development. And we would not have won those national championships, if you would, without the help of, for one, the Enterprise Fund, but for another, without the tireless work of chambers of commerce like the Richardson Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for the role that you play in helping Texas win that championship. Now, as we progress through this session, as you might imagine, one of the top issues that we will be focused on is ongoing economic success here in the state of Texas. But we have so many other strategies, some of which you may have seen that I announced in the State of the State this past week. And it starts with what I think is going to be the most important thing to the future of Texas, one of the most important things to the future economic development of the state of Texas. And that is focusing on our students in our schools and improving our education system here in the Lone Star State. Now, we have some good news that we must applaud, and that is that our schools are better than they have been in the past. The fact of the matter is that more students are graduating from high school than ever before. More students are graduating from college than ever before. Texas has more public high schools ranked in the top 100 and more blue ribbon public schools than any state in America. And to double down on higher education, it too is better than it's ever been. In the past 4 years, Texas has doubled the number of Tier 1 universities, and we're proud to say that one of the leaders of that is your very own University of Texas, Dallas. Because of what UTD is doing and because of what our universities are doing, Texas truly is leading America's pathway to becoming the epicenter of research and innovation. Well, with all of us working together, I can tell you very candidly and very factually, you working with leaders in Austin have elevated Texas to rarefied status. And I'm proud to tell you that the state of Texas is better today than it has ever been in the history of this great state. Despite the things that we've accomplished, I think that we can all agree that there's far more that we must do if we are going to continue to elevate Texas. In typical Texas fashion, we don't rest on our laurels. We work to excel even more. That's what our focus is during this session with Angie and with Jeff. That's what everybody's focused on in Austin, Texas. And I know it's what you are focused on here at the local level. And going back at the top of that list is improving education. Now, going back to what I said moments ago, yes, it's true that we are graduating more students from high school than ever before, but at the very same time, it's also true that more of our graduates are not prepared for either college or a career. And here's the problem. Only about 40% of third graders are reading at third grade level by the time they finish the third grade. And it probably will then not come as a surprise that less than 40% of high school graduates who take the SAT or ACT demonstrate that they are actually eligible or capable of performing at college level. So to fix this, I want you to know that the state of Texas is going to be adding a lot more money to our education system. However, we're not just going to throw more money at the system hoping that it's going to lead to improvement. Instead, we're going to invest in proven strategies that truly do improve success rates for our students. The strategy is very straightforward, and that is we want to both recruit and retain the very brightest and best teachers we can and to pay those teachers more. We want to create a pathway where teachers truly can be on the pathway to earning a six-figure salary. Now, this isn't pie in the sky, because the teacher pay system used by the Dallas Independent School District shows that this strategy works. When I visited Blanton Elementary School in Dallas not too long ago, I had the opportunity to meet with one of those outstanding teachers who was only in his third year as a teacher and already making more than $90,000 a year. Teachers across Texas, teachers here in Richardson deserve the ability to earn that type of money. Well, using proven incentive pay strategies that do truly attract the very best teachers, as well as prioritizing education funding spending into the classroom, we are going to create a Texas where every student is going to be reading at or above the third grade level by the time they finish the third grade, and where every student graduates with far more than just a diploma. They will graduate with the tools they need to be able to truly succeed in college or in a career. Now, to be clear, the state of Texas will provide the funding to achieve these strategies. And the funding amount, listen, it's going to depend upon negotiations as we make our way through the session, but it will be in the billions of dollars of what the state of Texas will be adding. And to make sure that we get this important strategy achieved this session, I have declared school finance reform and increasing teacher pay to be emergency items that must pass out of the session here in the next few months. Now, as Jeff Leach knows as well as anybody, another emergency item that we have is to reform property taxes in Texas. You know, Texans are increasingly fretting about rising property rates, and many wonder whether or not they're going to be taxed out of their homes. Chandler Crouch is a realtor in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He says, and I quote, he gets phone calls at least once a week that people are going to have to sell their house if taxes go up anymore. He says, and I continue to quote, some already have. And he says, that's not American. It is not the way it should be. The fact of the matter is, across this entire region, seniors are being taxed out of their homes. Gentrification and unaffordable housing are becoming commonplace in Dallas County as well as other places across the state because of skyrocketing property taxes. If we are going to achieve our common goal, and that is to keep Texas the economic engine of America, we must rein in a property tax system that punishes families as well as businesses. All of us collectively, we can no longer sit idly by while property owners are being reduced to being tenants of their own property, with taxing authorities playing the role of landlords. So I want to applaud both the House and Senate for what they've done already this early in a session, where they've both offered up and filed identical bills in both the House and Senate to rein in property tax system by limiting taxing authorities' ability to raise your taxes. Now, let me fully explain this. Whenever these issues arise, there are a lot of arguments of pushback about changing the status quo. But every argument that I've heard against limiting taxing authorities' ability to raise property taxes is flawed for the following reasons. The most common argument that I get, whether it shows up in newspapers or public comments, is that what the state really just needs to do is to provide more funding for education, and just magically the property tax system is going to be solved. Well, in part that has been answered because, as I've already mentioned, the state will be adding billions of dollars more for funding of education in the state of Texas. But that really will do absolutely nothing to limit local governments from being able to raise your property taxes. In fact, to the converse, it could give them latitude to raise your taxes even more. Moreover, additional state funding for education will do absolutely nothing to limit property tax increases that are caused by increasing appraisals. The only way to prevent property taxes from being raised more is to put a lid on the ability to raise those property taxes. The second argument is that this plan, well, it infringes on local control. Well, to the contrary, current Texas law already requires property tax rate rollback elections. All we're proposing is to lower the rate that would trigger the rate rollback property tax election. And then moreover, on top of that, contrary to reducing local control, this rate rollback system actually empowers local control by putting the power into the hands of local citizens. The third argument is that the rate rollback, well, it ties the hands of local government's ability to meet the needs of their citizens. Well, to the contrary of that, many local officials, elected officials, disagree with that opinion. I'll give you one example nearby, depending on which side of the room I'm on. It's a local person. Collin County Judge Chris Hill said, and I quote, his county could easily operate under the cap. I continue to quote. He says, quote, one refrain that we hear from mayors is that citizens can either have low taxes or they can have excellent services, but they cannot expect both. He added, and I continue in quotes, in Collin County, we reject that way of thinking. He says that Collin County has the second lowest tax rate in the state out of all 254 counties. Bottom line is that the county court in Collin County knows they can fully operate within this cap as well as fully deliver the services that their residents need. And I'm going to give you two more reasons why the new property tax cap limit can work. One is there's a built-in mechanism that accommodates what you are seeing here in Richardson, what you're seeing in this region of DFW. Think Frisco, for example, or think Collin County, for example, or parts of Richardson. These are what you would categorize as fast growth areas. New growth is exempt from this property tax cap. If you look at the projects that have been added in Frisco, for example, just take one example, and that is the Star in Frisco. For the first year of the Star, this is going to be exempted from this cap, and hence it allows flexibility for the local governments to be able to have the added revenue they're going to be able to need to address and provide accommodations for all. It could be new houses, it could be new buildings, it could be new commercial facilities. A second thing I'll add that would be great for local governments if this reform passes. I believe the time has come to end state-based unfunded mandates on local governments. And if this passes, I submit that it should pass with the accompanying requirement that the state of Texas no longer impose unfunded mandates on local governments. Then I'll throw in this added bonus. The property tax reform will reduce the amount of Robin Hood recapture that some school districts have to pay, and it will prevent other school districts from falling into Robin Hood recapture. And so what this means, if I can throw out a little legal jargon for you for a second, equity, as required by the Texas Constitution to ensure that all schools will receive equitable funding, will be maintained by the state of Texas making up the difference for any revenue lost by schools on the receiving end of recapture Robin Hood payments. Now let me take a step back. Let's breathe for a second. I know that I've thrown a whole lot of substance at you. This is kind of like some people along here going home and thinking, man, let's just stop by a place and get a quick appetizer and having a 7-course meal thrown at you. It's a whole lot to digest. But if it were simple, if it were a 30-second soundbite, this is something that would not be a problem in the state of Texas because it would have been solved a long time ago. This is a big issue affecting the lives of everybody in this room and everybody in Richardson and everybody in the state of Texas. It's an issue that we have to address to make sure that Texas remains affordable, to make sure that people are not taxed out of their homes, to make sure that we are making our schools better by providing them the funding that they need, all while making Texas a better place. Well, despite the size and substance of what I've already talked about, amazingly, this just scratches the surface of what we are going to accomplish this session. Working with Angie and Jeff, as well as their peers in the House and Senate, there's so much more we're going to do, which includes providing more funding and strategies to make our schools safer for our students. No child should be afraid to go to school. No parent should be afraid to drop their child off at school. We are going to step up this session and make sure our schools are safer places for our students. Also, and very importantly, and you'll need to see the way this develops over the course of the session, we are going to invest more than $1 billion to create the Texas Mental Health Care Consortium to finally better address the mental health needs of people in our state. We look in a way, for anybody who knows anything about what's called CPRIT, which is the cancer program that was offered up about a decade ago that made Texas in the forefront of all the states in the United States with regard to cancer innovation. This is a launching pad for the same strategy in Texas to make Texas the leading state in America when it comes to addressing the mental health challenges of our citizens. And to make our communities safer, we're going to add more law enforcement and provide more resources to crack down on the growing number of gangs and human traffickers who are preying upon our citizens and ensure that our communities remain safe. And then last, to rebuild communities damaged by Hurricane Harvey. We are going to tap the Rainy Day Fund, and we will forge new strategies to ensure that our communities are going to be far more resilient. So let me just close with this. If you look at what I've talked about, and so much more that we're going to be doing, there is absolutely no doubt that we are advancing a very bold agenda, a bold agenda that is going to completely transform Texas in a very positive way. But it's important to emphasize, Texas was built on bold ideas. It was built by the men and women who came before us, men and women who worked together to make Texas the most exceptional state in our nation. Well, now it is our time. It's our time for not just the members of the legislature, but for the citizens of Richardson, the members of the Richardson Chamber of Commerce, those who work at University of Texas at Dallas, those who gather in this room today. It is collectively the time for all of us to chart a new course for the state of Texas, a course that will make our state far better than it's ever been, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 40 years. We have an opportunity to turn bold ideas into reality. And when we do that, we are going to keep Texas the best state in the greatest nation in the history of this world. Thank you for what you do. May God bless you all, and may God forever bless the great state of Texas.